All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to No Fear, the podcast that explores the boundaries of courage and fear. I am Pete Pepe, one of the co-founding members of 3777. I have the great pleasure of having the other two co-founding members with me today. To my left, Mr. Iiro Seppänen, and directly in front of me, Mr. Jeb Corliss. All right. Welcome, guys. Today's a good one, as they always are. Today, we're going to be talking about tribe and the importance of having a community and how having that support system, again, can actually help elevate you to be the best version of yourself and also help you learn some things along the way and hopefully, learn from other people's mistakes. And it kind of deals with mentorship and a few other things. So that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to get it kicked off. I'm going to give it to Iiro, as I always do, to say a few words.
Hey, thank you, Pete. Lovely introduction. I'm going to talk a little bit about my career and the importance of having mentors who are who have always taught me the ropes and how do things can be done right. I've had lots of different careers. When I was young, in my late teens, I became a professional magician, and then that led into base jumping career, into producing. But all the success I've had in any of those fields are because I was always being identified mentors that were helping to make my dreams possible. And in some ways, Jeb, you were one of my base jumping mentors because you were always a few steps ahead, and you were like a sponge for knowledge and so like a particulate on details. So I knew that you were like I didn't have to like ask from 10 different sources. Jeb was enough for me, but how my kind of a path through different mentors led into meeting you.
He's enough for a lot of people.
And then, but anyhow, with magic, like I'm an 80s kid, so like, I mean, I've talked before that I was a professional magician, but I kind of represent that culture and the generation where you had to have a mentor, and I was apprentice for a famous magician in Finland, and he was one of those guys that taught you 9 tricks that were quite difficult but not very good to see you interested to continue, kind of like Karate Kid, like where you have to do like mundane tasks in order to figure out like your purpose and the tricks that really work. So I went all through that, and slowly I was able to network up. I was always find better mentors, and that contributed much to my success to perform all over the world. And once I burned out in the career of performing, I did hundreds of shows every year. I started to do a magic trick where people would tie my hands and legs and push me out of an airplane, and that introduced me into the world of skydiving, and then it led into base jumping. And I really wanted to base jump, but where in the late 90s, it was not as open as it is. There was no really chances to do it legally. So it went back to the mentorship. So you have to find someone who's more experienced than you, and then try to convince them to take you for a base jump. And my path to Jeb was through first to Henry Pohjolainen, who's a very good like a gear manufacturer in Florida. And he introduced me to Jari Kuosma, who's one of the original founders of Birdman wingsuits. And then he had 50 base jumps at the time, which sounded a lot. And he was very knowledgeable in my eyes. So I convinced him to take him, and Frank Lepool took me to an antenna in Florida, and it was love at first sight. And it was scary, but at the same time, I figured out I just found my passion. And then riding on that kind of happy times, only a few months later, I'm in Norway, and then I obviously famously already told that I heard your laughter from around the corner and loud speech, and I can just like heard that from hundreds of meters away, and kind of I was gravitated towards you, and we started to struck up a friendship, and in some ways, when I felt like when I was making the transition away from magic to base jumping, that I was this longing of things, because my dreams changed, and my dreams became awfully real and awfully dangerous, and a lot of the people misinterpreted like why I was doing that, and what's my motivation. And I felt in many ways that I was quite lonely, because I had big dreams, and I felt like I was alone and no one else shared those dreams. But with like base jumping, it was an introduction to a community that you don't only share your dreams, but you help each other to make them a reality. And I think that was the first tribe that I felt truly accepted and welcome was the group of base jumpers. And through that, like with the friendship with Jeb, and I told you like Jeb likes to do a lot of planning and preparation, and he taught me how to pack my parachute. And many times I pretended I forgot the fold, and then same as stories like you had to go and show me from the beginning, and I loved it. So there were so many times that I got you to pack my parachute, and thank you for those extra
Now,
lessons.
let me ask you, because I think I know a little bit of this story about when you first met. So were you seeking a mentor? Were you like, okay, I got to find? You found the one guy with the 50 base jumps. I'm blanking on his name. But were you like, okay, like what made you seek him out? Did you see him jump and were you like, oh shit, that guy kicks ass, he's doing all this crazy, or yeah,
there was different levels. You were quite beginner at that time, so like, but I knew nothing. Like there was all these like sky guards who turn into base jump, and they have thousands of skydives. So my main intention was enter like skydiving in order to do base jump. So I didn't have this pool of knowledge that I can go for. So I was really dangerous for my first couple dozen jumps. So any information was very much welcome, because there was no courses. So like, I mean, literally my first jumps is like, let's climb an antenna and keep your eyes on the horizon and good luck. So it's that type of things. And now you have courses that last for like a week or 2 weeks, and you learn all the basics. So I was not reckless by choice. Like that was just like reflected the times when the sport was underground, and I think that's also a good point. When someone really tries to forbid something, it doesn't go away. So I just had to learn to base jump in more dangerous and challenging conditions rather than doing out in the open and legally.
Right, but he was a bit of a tough nut to crack in a sense, shall we say, right? Because it wasn't like you said, okay, I want to learn from this guy. He seems like he maybe has a little bit more experience than me. And he started talking to you, and weren't you kind of like, wasn't he like hunting you down a little bit? Like you weren't like, hey, bro, like.
Well, I mean,
just because back then probably you were a little bit more singular.
Well, I've always been very antisocial. Like I never really was around people much, and in my childhood I went to homeschooling from like 5th to 12th grade, so I never really learned how to like interact with other humans. So when we met, my goal was I had shown up in Norway to just jump. Like I had no intention of talking to people or communicating with humans or doing anything with people, period. I just was like, I'm going to climb the mountain, I'm going to jump off the mountain, come back, I'm going to pack, I'm going to climb the mountain, I'm going to jump off. That's all I was doing. That there was nothing else. I have a little bit of I'm strange. So I get very focused and fixated, and that was my goal. And when Iiro first walked in, so they had like this area is called Jirag, and it's very small, has a community of like 30 people. Like it's tiny. I think 300 at its peak when they're doing like the summers, but in the winters it's like down to 30. So it's very small. And what they do is there's like a camping area, and then there's a white house that they turn into like a hostel for jumpers. So if you were lucky enough to get in the White House, you could get a room, but then there's like a common room where everyone just kind of is. So I had no choice but to be around humans. So I was in the common room just kind of like trying to avoid eye contact because I was just like, I didn't really want to talk to anybody. And then Iiro comes in, and at the time he was a performer, like he was a magician, and he was very charismatic, and he's a very social person. He likes people, and he loves communicating with people and talking with people. And he was just going around, talking with everyone, showing magic tricks and doing all this stuff. And I'm just like going, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden he comes up to me and starts talking to me, and I'm just like, oh, hi. Like, okay. And I didn't know what to say or do because I was extra weird. Like I'm weird now, but I was even weirder then. And I was like, okay, it was a little bit too much. So I kind of got up and walked away, and he just looked at me like, hey, you're strange. But he kind of went off on his own to do his stuff. And then the next day, we kind of all shared this big van that would take us up to the top. And as we're going up to the top, he sits right next to me, and he's like talking to me, and he's like really trying to communicate, but I'm not capable because I'm just weird. So I'm like, okay, I'm not really having a conversation, but I'm like listening and, trying to talk, but I just wasn't good at it. And then we start hiking, and he's right with me, hiking with me. And I was like,
I got to ditch this guy.
No, I wasn't like I have to ditch the guy. I just didn't know what to do because I wasn't a social person. I just was not good with people at all. And all of a sudden he said something that I was like, oh, that's weird. And he's like, yeah, I'm friends with Gina Davis. And I'm like, oh, really? I'm like, oh, do you know Emily? Because Emily, my little sister Scarlett, was really good friends with Emily, which was Gina Davis's goddaughter, and she lived with her. So if he was friends with Gina Davis, then he would probably know Emily. And he's like, oh yeah, I know Emily. He's like, wait a minute. So is your sister Scarlett? And I'm like,
oh wow.
And it was weird. He's like, I've been in your house. Wait, you're the base jumper dude who wears all black. Oh shit. He's like, you have a big white snake. He's all, oh, I need to kick your ass. He's like, I gave your sister alcohol and you threw it away. You dick. That was expensive shit. And so all of a sudden, it was like this. What it did is it broke the ice.
That's cool.
And all of a sudden, I was like, oh, fuck this dude. It was weird because he'd been in my house. And all of a sudden, then we started talking and I felt more comfortable. And then all of a sudden, I noticed that we had a similar goal. We wanted to base jump off fucking everything.
Awesome.
And as we're talking, we're like, we jumped together, and then we were kind of hanging out and talking more. And then all of a sudden, my buddy Iiro showed up because I'd already made friends with him the year before. And then so it started making me feel even more comfortable. And then we started making plans. And then it's like, okay, well, he's going to come to the States. We're going to do Bridge Day together. And then we're going to get our first building. We're going to go to New York.
Nice.
And where's a better place to get a building than New York? So we're going to go to New York together. We're going to get a building together for our first one.
You guys hadn't even gone you hadn't completed, you didn't have base numbers yet.
No, we didn't.
Wow.
And base number means that base jumper is a skydiver who jumps on fixed object, and base is an acronym for buildings, and then spans, which can be bridges and earth like mountains.
Yeah. And once you've done all four objects, you can then get a base number, and you're considered a base jumper. So that's kind of and for us, it's like we need to get our.
I know he's 6'4". What number are you?
I never got one.
Oh, he's such a rebel.
Yeah, I didn't care about getting the numbers as much as I just wanted to do the objects. Like for me, I had a different motivation. I didn't care about numbers.
And I wanted to get the 666 number, so I sat on my application for a long time until I
told you I see 646 all the time. It's the most fucking bizarre thing.
That's funny.
I'm always like, Iiro. It's like literally like for years, ever since we met, I've been, oh, look what time it is, 646. I'm like, what the fuck? What is it? Was weird. It's always Iiro.
But what's fascinating, though, is that Iiro was, because up to that point, I was very lonely. Like, I was a very lonely person because I just didn't have friends. Like, I just didn't really have any friends. And what happened is, meeting Iiro, I started realizing that I wasn't alone, that there actually were other human beings who had the same hopes and desires and dreams and were similar. Because I always felt very weird. I always felt like a very strange person who was kind of an outcast because I couldn't relate with people. Like my brain just didn't work the same way, and having a conversation was very difficult for me. And it still is, even to this day, having conversations with people can be challenging for me. So it was it was fun to meet someone who I could talk with, and we were excited about the same things and wanted to do the same things, and we were motivated to do the same things, which was travel around the world and jump off everything. Then he also wanted to get into shark diving. I'd been shark diving for, at that point, already like 5 years, and I was really into it. And it's like, oh, I have someone to go shark diving with because I'm always diving by myself, So that was really where I started understanding community and this concept of okay, this is actually enhanced by doing it with others. And you can actually, and me, the reason why I was a little more, had a little more experience in Iiro wasn't because I had more jumps. We had similar numbers of jumps. But what I did is I actually did go through the very first base jumping course that existed. There was Annie and Todd had a company called Basic Research, and Basic Research built the very first specific base jumping equipment, the first canopies and the first containers. And when they started building gear, they started their own little class to kind of teach people how to use it properly. So I was in the first generation of going through an actual course. Wow. So I had knowledge from people who'd been doing it for 20 years. So even though I didn't have that much actual real world experience, I did have a class that I went through where I learned from, at the time, two of the literally they were the best base jumpers in the world at the time.
Yeah, hands down.
So they actually helped me. So I had a lot of knowledge, which I was able to help with, Iiro, give him some. But Iiro never really explained how limited his knowledge was. So he never told me that. Like, it wasn't like, oh, Jeb, I need some help. I helped him with some packing stuff, but I didn't know. And then, if I had known more, I would have helped more. But
I pretended. I had a big ego. I thought I knew it. And then, I didn't know that actually knowledge would save me from a lot of the broken bones and everything. But I think it's also if you would really know, I don't think I was afraid that you wouldn't travel or jump with me. So I try to kind of
he didn't realize what a dork I was, and I would have hung out anyway.
Okay, so let me ask you guys. That's actually really cool. So you guys then, you guys pal together. Does that then, as your adventures are going, you're shark diving, you guys are skydiving, you're base jumping, I know the wingsuits in there
later.
A little bit come later. But did you guys both find that once you started to find your tribe and people that understood you because they were the same people that had the same philosophy and they thought like you guys and they were after the same, dreams and they were seeking the same thing. Did you guys find that started to help elevate? Were you able to play off that and elevate one another? Not to say it pushed you to go, he's pushing me to jump off something higher. I know that's
the answer to that question is absolutely. I started realizing that in order to get better, I had to jump with people who were better than me. And I started hanging out with, at the time, the gnarliest, most hardcore base jumpers on the planet. And it's a double-edged sword because, yes, you are going to learn a lot in that environment. I was hanging out with the Russians and the Australians, which in almost all sports, those two groups of people are always the gnarliest. And the Russians are like super gnarly, but they're not as skilled. The Australians are super gnarly, but they're skilled. So I was hanging out with a guy named Slim and Dwayne, which at the time were the best base jumpers on the planet.
Is Slim Australian or was he Russian?
Yeah, no, they were both
Both.
Australians.
Those were both.
Australians, they earned the Australians' reputation being the most hardcore jumpers out there.
By far. They were the most hardcore. So that's where I got a lot of my knowledge and a lot of my inspiration was through them. And when I got into like the aerial acrobatics, which was at the time the most complicated, difficult, dangerous form of base jumping. So of course that's what I wanted to do. So I focused in on them because they were the best at it. And then they started educating me on, you need to do high diving training. You need what you needed to do the more complicated maneuvers. And safely is a hard word to say it, but in the best way possible to give you the best chance for success. So that was what I got into. And then Iiro would come along and we would jump with each other. So we started building this network of jumpers from all over the world. And that's what base jumping is interesting because there's like little meccas, like place where they all come together. And so Norway is one of those places where jumpers come together. Bridge Day is another place where the jumpers come together. And then when you're in those locations, and then Switzerland is one, and there's different ones all over
Italy.
Italy, Arco. But so what happens is when you're in these places, you will meet jumpers from all over the world. And then when you meet them, you'll tell them about objects you've jumped, and then they'll tell you about objects they've jumped, and you share information. And then you'll usually, if you get along, they'll take you to their objects, and then you'll get some more experience, more objects. And in the beginning, that's important. In the beginning, the more jumps you do on the more different objects, the more experience you get, the better you get. And that's kind of like anything else. The more time in seat, the better you're going to get at it. So that becomes your motivation, is meeting as many jumpers as you can. And that was difficult for me because I wasn't social. So I had to kind of come out of my shell, which Iiro actually helped me with, because I was really antisocial when I started. But Iiro helped me communicate, and he helped break the ice, and he could actually do the conversations, and then I could come in, and then that's where I kind of grew. And it was good. It was very helpful for me.
Well, let me ask you two things. I'm going to ask you about a jump in a second, but back up. There's something, just as a comment, something cool, or shall we say almost romantic, in a sense of that you've got people that are spread out all over. And this is why I think that I was kind of like, God, I want to be a part of this, even though I don't jump.
Yeah.
There was always the allure of it where it was like, it's a tight-knit crew. That there's only a few people doing this, and it's something that's so special in a sense that not everybody can do it. So when you're finding other people that are thinking the same way that are doing it, there's such a sense of community and tribe because it has so much meaning behind it, because we know that it's so lethal if you...
Well, that's the thing. So you end up creating very powerful bonds very quickly, because when you're doing this, you're usually out in the wilderness. It's just you and them. Usually small groups of 2 to maybe 5 people will go out in the mountains to go do these jumps, and there is no one there to help you. At the time we were doing it, you didn't have cell phones. You didn't have any communication with the outside world.
Smoke signals.
If you got jacked up or injured, they're the ones that are going to pull you out. So you have to rely on them, that they're going to save your life in a life-threatening situation. So you become very close very quick. And that kind of emotional connection is very powerful. And talking about a tribe, that's what it becomes. And kind of going back to this idea of, like philosophy, like you said, you want to be part of this, but you didn't jump. I started learning over time that base jumping, to me, like people say, is it a sport? Isn't it a sport? I don't give a shit. Like, I don't care how you define it. That's not relevant. To me, it was more of a philosophy. Like, it was a way of thinking, a way of seeing your life, seeing the importance of your life, understanding your mortality and why you need to get things accomplished now while you can. And I started realizing that there are people who don't base jump, but share that mentality, that philosophy. I didn't have a name for it. So I just called it, you know, you're a base jumper. You haven't base jumped yet. You know, like you have the base jumping mindset, which when I saw you were an artist, you were, you know, and I saw there's in something there, you know, but with most people, I can look at them and if that's a base jumper or not a base jumper. But now when 3777 came into existence, all of a sudden that encapsulated that philosophical idea. The idea of a person. So now instead of saying, oh, you're a base jumper, it's now 3777. That's what you are, part of this group of people who think this way and connect in this way. And you're an extreme individual who understands that life will one day come to an end. And you're not going to allow the fear of something that's completely and absolutely inevitable prevent you from living your life and turning your dreams into realities. Yeah. And that, to me, became the entire philosophical concept behind what base jumping was. And it turns out most extreme sports, most real sports, you know, and then you're like, and even artists, and I mean, it fits into so many categories of so many different people with so many mindsets, but it's what kind of bonds them together.
It was interesting. I'm going to let you say, but when you think about it, when we had met, and you and I, you know, are social, you're being more social than me, even me, but it was that neat thing where there was instant bonding. But I think once the 3777 thing came to fruition and it started to come together, and I know it started more as an underground movement for the three of us, you know, and then it started to slightly go out to the base community, the wingsuit, and then we all kind of like, boing, the light bulb went off, and we're like, wait. It's not just, you know, segregated to this little crew.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of 3777 people out there. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
It's just finding them. It's about getting the message out there, making people aware that there is a home to come to where you can talk to other people that think the same way you are, so you're not alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to actually go back, like you already asked the questions a little while ago about that whole like close-knit community. And I think that was an important thing. So there is the whole like action that you do, but it's always like the community and the people you share it with. And I like the base jumping community because if you wanted to meet other jumpers and jump in urban environment, especially, there's a certain code of conduct that you have to follow. So there's all rules, and I've always been drawn into all kinds of like underground cultures, from bikers to graffiti, and so I've always liked that. There's a lot of these different organizations or like movements or communities. Your position have to be earned, and you can't talk your way into it. So it has to go through like your actions and following a certain honor code. And I think in that sense, like that's why I resonated so with base jumpers, because there was a certain combining factor that brought people together, and that's what I'm looking forward in 3777, because we are like kind of a relaunching and introducing around the world, like where does it resonate, and just making it more broader and ultimately returning to the longing that are there more people who are sharing this way of thinking of life general.
Well, and the community and the concept of tribe. I mean, that's where what you're getting to. Yeah.
Well, it's cool too. It's not. At least for us, I think it's not intended to be something trendy. Like you said, it's something that's earned, or at least it's something that is in your mindset, that is a constant thing in your life. I know you've got the kick-ass 3777 tattoo. I know we have some other people out there with them. And I just think having that mindset where it's a reminder, again, to wake up every day, whatever you're doing that day, and to go after it, but knowing there's other people that are going after it just like you. That's your crew. And having a crew that thinks that way, I think is just special. But again, not like, oh, it's trendy to wear the 3777 gear. No. We haven't made we've lost a lot of money printing these things out, so it's definitely not a business. So we're just doing it out of passion, and I think why we're doing this, like we're preaching constantly the philosophy, is that I've noticed that's why I have my tattoo. It's just a reminder for me, because I think it has a positive underlining. So if I kind of wonder, like if I need to do something today, or should I watch Netflix, I was like, damn, I went to tattoo this thing on me. If I don't do it now, like I'm gonna regret this tattoo. So for me, it's like always a reminder, not pushing things aside and not taking things for granted. So a lot of the times, a lot of the friends, like there's been
there's been casualties and deaths that you've expected that this happened, and then they've been so sudden, and people that you lost, and you haven't said goodbye the last like the way that you should have. So in way, it's a reminder not to also to take on my own time, but also the other friends like people's time for granted, and always like say things that you mean, and try to leave it on a positive note, because most of the things that you regret when people die are the things that you left unsaid.
Yeah,
That's true.
Well, I think too, like it's interesting as we age or as we get wiser, there's seems to be a recurring theme again about mentors and giving back. And I think it's cool that as we're getting there, you both have a vast knowledge that you can hand down to the next generation to educate people, to encourage people to do certain things, but they can learn. There's a lot of lessons learned in broken bones and blood spilled, and putting it out there every time and putting it on the line. I think that you guys will be able to hand down to people.
Most of what I like to hand down is the concept of a philosophical idea, and that's where this project, if you want to call it, is kind of this idea of handing down the idea of understanding mortality and understanding how important it is. Like you keep saying, to not like take your life for granted and the little bit of time you get to exist. It's very important that you find things that you're passionate about, find things that you love, find things that you care about, and then once you do, doing them. That's super important to me. And if you can find other people who share these same goals and dreams and ideas who can then also do them with you, that actually makes it even a little bit better.
Yeah.
So, that's the concept of the community. You find your people, right? The birds that flock together.
Yeah.
That's kind of concept. Birds of a feather flock together. So you find people who are like you come together, and then you go out in the world and experience these things. Yeah. And by experiencing them together, it actually does enhance the experience.
I have an interesting question, because it's a story that stuck with me that you had told that resonates pretty heavy. I know as we're growing up, and again, finding community, finding tribe, I mean, these terms are thrown out so much these days, again, on social media, but there's also that aspect of idolization, like looking at people. And it's one thing to have a mentor, but then it seems like so many people then, especially in today's age, and I know even back when we were growing up, there's this people idolizing, going, I want to be like that other person. I want to be like that other person. And I know this tips into our identity theme, where it's really, really important, I think, when people actually can emulate people or draw from other people's success and other people's actions. But then it's important to have your own identity and become you. And you had told me an interesting story. And again, I always look at you, think of your stories, see the things you've accomplished, and go, God, man, people must walk around. They're going to dress in black and they want to be like Jeb. How cool is that? They're like, holy. But you had an interesting kind of different outlook on that type of.
Do we want to go that dark?
I was just, again, it was a fascinating story. You could maybe do the abbreviated version, but it was very fascinating, where you weren't taking your, shall we say, your feats of fame.
Yeah.
You weren't taking it and being like I'm Kim Kardashian. Everybody follow me and dress like me, be like me.
I guess the best way to say it is I, in the beginning, when people were starting to recognize me and people were starting to emulate me, I actually thought it was kind of a cool thing. It's like, oh, that's kind of almost sweet in a way, like, the people enjoy my work. And I always like, that's cool that they like my work and get inspired by it. I thought that was in the beginning kind of cool. But then something did happen that made me realize, whoa, man, this is really serious stuff. Like, it's not a joke. And I was in Switzerland, and I was drinking water at a little bar called the Horner Pub, which is really like kind of famous there. Like, base jumpers hang out there a lot. And I was just sitting there having some water, talking to some friends and stuff. And Russians showed up. And whenever a group of Russians show up, something gnarly is about to happen. Like, there's always carnage. Like, the second Russians show up, like, we're gonna see some wild shit now, because they just are wild people. And there was I guess 8 of them, and they show up, and one of them kind of walks up to me, and he's like, hey, he's the only one who kind of spoke some English. He's like, I have a friend, and he'd like to get a picture with you. And I'm like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. So I walk over, and this guy has a shaved head. He's wearing sunglasses. He's wearing all black. He looks like a little miniature me. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And the guy's like, yeah, he is your biggest fan. He absolutely loves you. You're the one that inspired him to get into jumping. And I'm like, oh, that's super cool. And he's like, he wants to know, could you guys do a jump together later? And I'm like, absolutely. I'm like, I'm a little busy now, but I'm going to go pack parachutes, and maybe, we'll catch each other a little bit later. But let's get the pictures. So I ran around and we got a photograph, and, it was cool. I was like, oh, that's super sweet, whatever. So I go off. I don't see them again for a while. I go pack my parachute. A buddy of mine, we go over and jump a cliff called Le Mousse. Okay, so this is like a few hours later, hike up there, we jump Le Mousse. And as we're walking back from Le Mousse, we see a police officer and one of the Russians in another jump called Yellow Ocean, which is kind of on the way back when you're walking back to town. And when you see a police officer in Switzerland, because it's 100% legal there. So if you see a police officer, that means something bad has happened. Usually someone has been either seriously injured or killed. So we're like, uh-oh, it's the Russians, something happened. And my buddy goes over and talks to the guy, and it happened to be the dude who spoke some English. And one of the Russians died. And I'm like, and he comes over and he tells me, yeah, one of them died. And I'm like, oh shit. I hope it's not the little dude in black. Like, that would really suck. Like, that would be just horrible, you know? So anyways, we start walking back, and you walk through this area where there's something called air glacier, and it's like the helicopter that does all the rescues. So they literally land right next to the path that you walk through to get back to town. And as I'm walking on the path, I look over and I see a stretcher, and the little dude in black's on it. It was him. He literally just told me that I inspired him to be a base jumper, and here he is laying dead on a stretcher like a few hours later. And it was disturbing. It was an incredibly disturbing experience that struck me very hard. And it made me kind of understand, you know, this sport is so dangerous. And I felt really terrible after that whenever anyone told me I inspired them to become a jumper. And I never wanted to be a dick about it. But like when people would say, you know, I hear it a lot, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it. But I have a lot of people tell me, you inspired me to get into base jumping. And I'm like, whoa. Just stop right there. You were going to do this whether you saw me or not. You would have seen someone else. This is you. Yeah. This is what you wanted to do. This is who you are. This is your philosophy. This has nothing to do with me. And they're like, no, it was you. And I'm like, no. I'm telling you, it wasn't me. And I'm not trying to be like, you know, and so I've had at least 4 different people tell me I inspired them to jump, and they're all dead.
I have one. Like I've only, like when you ask about the mentorship, so I've only like always pushed away of having a base jumping student. Like I've always think it's just a pressure. I don't want to do it. And then I had a friend who would have, I usually would have definitely gone to base jumping. He was already telling stories that he's a base jumper, even he was not. And I told him that if he wants to learn actually jump and do it safely, like I'll teach him how. And then I was trying to hold him back. He had a lot of his big personality, lots of energy. I was trying to hold him back as long as I could, because I know like once he lets go, he goes, and off he went, like to became one of the most famous base jumpers in the world, and died. So that's also like, that's the only student I've ever had in base jumping. And so in that sense, like I can mentor philosophies on life, or like, you know, business or movies or anything else. But like base jumping is something that that like you would always try to talk people out of it, because it truly is a horrible activity, and but it changed our lives into much better. But we also got lucky that we're here now talking about it.
I do. Yeah. That's one thing I always am like be super clear about. I don't think anyone should base jump. Period. The end. I think that if you can find happiness in your life doing anything else, you do anything else. This activity is for a very specific type of person who wouldn't be able to live without it. Basically, the way I see it is, you have to be a human being who needs this to survive. Then you don't have a choice. You have to do this. Like, that's not an option, right? And that's a very specific type of person, you know. And I don't think it's for everybody. Skydiving, anyone can do. Anyone. It's the level of danger that's involved is within reason. It's like riding a motorcycle. If you're willing to take the risk of riding a motorcycle, skydiving's great. They're similar. Base jumping, there is nothing else in the world that even comes remotely close to what it is as far as the risk that you're taking and the likelihood of you being injured or killed. And I think that, you know, if you had kids or like, this is an irresponsible thing. Like I'm not a proponent of it. I'm not a promoter of this as a healthy, safe lifestyle. It's not.
Well, that's a true mentorship. That's for anyone who wants to have a long lifeline.
But here's what's cool. That's why I had brought up that story, wanted you to tell it, and it's great that you were able to express another one that you had, just because in our community and in our 3777 tribe, we by no means are putting videos up or putting imagery up to make people think like, hey, we're about base jumping, we're about wingsuiting, we're about, go put your ass on the line. It's like, do not misunderstand what we represent.
Yeah.
And the philosophy is the philosophy. So just don't misunderstand actions. Like, you guys have done things that most humans will never ever do.
Or should do.
Right. Yeah.
But you know what I mean?
A little bit disturbed, and we had to do them.
But the core of why you were doing it, everybody should do.
Well,
or just be, lie on your couch and do nothing.
I'm going to say this. There's a great Russian saying, which is, don't smoke, don't drink, still die, right? And I say, don't base jump, don't shark dive, don't fly wingsuits, still die. This is the reality. And then once you grasp that kind of understanding, it frees you to do the things you want to do with your life. I think that's the foundation of what 3777, the philosophy is this idea that if you don't do the things that bring your life joy and make you happy, it's not going to stop you from dying. You're still going to die. That's a given. The question is, if you don't do the things that bring your life joy and bring you happiness, well then, did you live? What was the point of your existence? And I guess I've always said it like this since my whole life, because I get into positions where things happen that freak me out and upset me. And it's always like, well, I would rather have, 48 years now. I always say it based on the age that I am at the time, but I would rather have 48 years living my dreams, doing the things that I love, standing on my feet like a man, than, 80 years on my knees like a slave. That's the reality, and that's why I do the things that I do and why I'm willing to sacrifice my life for them, because I realize that my life is going to get sacrificed anyway.
Yeah.
I need to choose how I want to sacrifice it. Do I want to sacrifice it eating Doritos on my couch watching TV, or do I want to sacrifice it out in the world facing the dragons? And that's what I do. I face dragons, and at the end of the day, one of those dragons may fucking kill me. Yeah. But guess what? That's the way I'd like to die.
Yeah, look, it's power. Look, it's all powerful. I think it's all worth people, taking due note of what you're saying and what is being represented here. And I think there's nothing cool that the human being has such a capacity to do amazing things. Like I think that's one of these things too. For us, we like seeing people excel. I love seeing other people do cool shit and shit. Well, I'm like, fuck, I can't wingsuit. I can't do what you guys do. I do what I do, which I know you guys go, awesome. We love what Pete does.
Of course, but it's like courage. It has so many different forms. What we discussed before, and like we talk a lot about ourselves, but it's often that we acknowledge other people and their courage in life. And a lot of the people who have a lot of courage have to find it inside when they throw in the deep pool of and on situations. So, well, we don't often talk about our like merch and what we've done, but like this is something that I want to introduce to our listeners. So we got these courage caps, and these are not something that you should buy for yourself. Oh, buy yourself. I didn't care. But this is something that we plan that you can keep for other people who've shown courage against the great odds, the people who have shown courage in exceptional situations. And this, for us, it's a symbol that we see you, we hear you, and we want to be there for you. So there's a guy, Jeb already knows him. He's a really good friend of mine who's earned this cap. So I'm thinking that after this show, I'm going to go there and hand him, and I'm going to tell all our viewers why he's such a special person, why he deserves this 3777 cap. So we can maybe stop this podcast here, and then we'll go continue the torch of 3777 to someone who really deserves it.
Awesome. Well, on that note, that's very well stated, Iiro. We just want to remind everybody, please, get a chance, subscribe to the 3777 channel. Also, go over to 3777.com to check out our merchandise and exclusive content that is there. We appreciate everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we will catch you next time.